In this mini course, I'm gonna show you how to set up a minimalistic CRUD web app using Blazor WebAssembly and ASP.NET Core Minimal Web APIs, so that at the end of it, hopefully, you'll have a better understanding of how to do that and have a reference application to kickstart your CRUD apps. I'll also cover publishing the projects to the Microsoft Azure Cloud on free tier resources. We'll publish the WebAssembly app to an Azure Static Web App resource and publish the API to an Azure App Service resource. This is an intermediate level mini course, so I am assuming that you have a basic understanding of C#, .NET and general web development concepts. It's split into two parts. This is the first part and will focus on creating the solution and the backend. In the second part, we'll focus on the front end. So the application you've been seeing behind me is the end result of this part of the mini course. I'll just quickly demo it for you. So we have a very simple post model. I'm just gonna get all the posts. Right, and we see it has your standard ID field. It has a title and a content field. And this is just an auto-generated Swagger UI. So I'll just create a new post. I'm gonna leave the ID 0. I'm gonna let Entity Framework decide that for me. I'll set the title to new post and the content to new post. Content, execute that. We see it worked. We get the created post back. I'll just get all the posts again. And there we go, it shows up. Now I'll try to update this post. So post ID 10. I'll just leave it 0 here. I'll just set the title to updated and the content to updated. And we get a 2 of 4 no content response back, meaning it worked. I'll just get all the posts again. And we see that the values have been updated. And lastly, I'll delete this example post. So post ID 10, execute that. And we get a 2 of 4 undocumented back. It also handles invalid IDs. So say we do 12, that doesn't exist, we get a not found. Same for the update, right, not found. And same for the get by ID, we get a not found. Right, so this is what we'll build in this part of the mini course. You can download the source code for free via the link in the description below. I'll also add links there to the sources I used. So I'm Ruben and it's my goal to help people learn software development with C# and .NET. And I do that by creating educational content about it. Now let's get started building. The technologies we'll use for both parts, we'll use .NET 6 LTS and C# 10. For the first part, the backend, we'll use ASP.NET Core Minimal Web APIs, Entity Framework Core, SQLite and Azure App Service. And for the second part, the front end, we'll be using Blazor WebAssembly, Bootstrap for the UI, Git hosted on GitHub, and we'll set up a simple continuous integration pipeline to an Azure Static Web App. For the IDE, I'll be using Visual Studio 2022. Right, so let's create the solution. So I'll just close my browser and open Visual Studio. I'm gonna hit create a new project and search for Blazor WebAssembly. And I see two logo variants. One with the more purple color and one is more pink. I believe the purple one is .NET 6 and the pink one is .NET 5. So I'm gonna go for the purple Blazor WebAssembly one. So just double click it. Then for the project name, I'm gonna do client, and I'll select my tutorials location. And for the solution name, I'm gonna do WASM with ASP.NET Core mini cores. And I don't want them in the same directory. Okay, then I'll hit next. I'm gonna leave the framework as .NET 6 LTS. I'm gonna keep the authentication type as none. I'll leave configure for HTTPS checked. And this might be a surprising one, but I'm gonna leave ASP.NET Core hosted unchecked because we'll create the web API project ourselves. The reason we do this is because this one will automatically use controllers for the APIs, and in this tutorial I want to use the new minimal web APIs. So lastly, I'm gonna check progressive web application, and this will allow our users to install our WebAssembly app to their devices. Okay, then I'll hit create. And now Visual Studio opens up with our created WebAssembly project. Alright, so for full stack web apps, I like to work backend to frontend. So let's create the web API project. So I'm gonna right click the solution, add a new project, and I'm gonna search for web API. And I want the first result titled ASP.NET Core Web API. So I'll double click it. And I'm just gonna name it server. The default location is fine. That's the solution root. So I'll hit next. For the framework, I'll keep the .NET 6 LTS. I'm gonna leave the authentication type to none. I'm gonna leave configure for HTTPS checked. I'm gonna leave Docker unchecked. And I'm gonna uncheck use controllers because we'll be using minimal APIs. And lastly, I'm gonna leave OpenAPI checked. Alright, and then I'll hit create. And there we go. So I'm just gonna add one more project the client and server will share so that we can better reuse our code. So I'm gonna right click the solution, add a new project, and I'm just gonna search for library, and we want this first one, class library, without the .NET framework. So I'll double click that, and I'm gonna name it shared, and the default location is fine. I'll hit next, and I'll keep the framework .NET 6 and hit create. Alright, so that's all the projects we'll need. Class 1 here opened in Visual Studio, but we won't be using that. So I'll just delete it here. Right, and then I'll close all the tabs. So let's get started on this backend. And by the way, if you want me to make more free content like this, please like and subscribe. Right, so in this mini course I'm gonna go for a SQLite database which will generate from our C# code using a code first approach. So we'll need a few NuGet packages for that. So I'm gonna right click the server, manage NuGet packages. Then I'll go to the browse tab and I'm gonna search for Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. And I'm gonna install the latest version. Alright, then I'll add .design to this query and install the latest version of that. And then I'll just replace this .design with .SQLite and install the latest version of that. Alright, and the last one is Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Diagnostics.Entity Framework Core. and I'll install the latest version of that. Alright. Awesome, that's all the NuGet packages we'll need for the server. So I'll just close this NuGet tab. Right, so let's start with our data model, and I'm gonna keep it really simple. I'll just do a post model with a few properties. So we're gonna create a C# class and then use Entity Framework to convert that into a SQLite database with a matching table. And I'm gonna do that in the shared project so that we can reuse the code. Right, so I'll right click shared, add a new folder, and I'm gonna name it models, and I'm gonna right click that and add a class, and I'm gonna name it post. Enter that, and I'll just zoom in for the people on their phones, which is actually 1/3 of my views. First of all, I'll remove all these using statements. Then I'll just add a semicolon to this namespace and remove the curly braces. And then I'll do Ctrl+KD to reformat. And instead of internal class, so only for this project, I'll make it public. So available to the entire solution. And I'll also add sealed, so that this class can't be inherited from. Right. So I'm gonna add some properties, which will be table columns, starting with your standard ID. So prop tab public int post ID, and I'll set the default value to 0, which is the default for integers, but I like to be explicit. Right, then another property, I'll do prop tab, and I'll do public string title, and this can never be null. So I'll set the default value to an empty string, so string.empty. And lastly, one more prop, but I'll actually just copy and paste this title and change the name to content. Now I want to specify some metadata about the properties so that Entity Framework has a little more to work with. So I'll use ASP.NET data annotations for that. And by the way, later on, Blazor WebAssembly can read out these data annotations and display error messages and stuff. So that's really cool. I'm gonna add the key annotation to the post ID. Just right click that, go to the refactorings, and I'll import this using statement. So now we've indicated that this is the primary key. For the title, I'll add required, got suggested there. And I'll also add the max length. And this one is pretty important, else Entity Framework will use nvarchar max, which is not good for performance. So I'll set the maximum amount of words to 100. So I'll copy and paste these annotations to the content, and I'll just change the max length to 10,000. Right, now let's generate a database from this model, and in Entity Framework you can use the dbContext class for that. So let's create our own dbContext. So I'm gonna go to the server project, just tuck those in, and create a folder. So I'll right click, add a new folder, and I'm gonna name it data. I'm gonna right click data and add a class, and we can name it whatever we want, and append dbContext to it. So I'll do minicourse dbContext and hit enter. Alright, so again I'm gonna add a semicolon to the namespace, remove the curly braces, hit Ctrl KD, just clean it up a bit. Right, so for the class signature, I'm gonna do public sealed class and inherit from DB context. I'm gonna right click that, refactorings, and import the entity framework core using statement. So to specify a column to add, we'll use the dbSet class. So I'm gonna add public dbSet, and for the generic, we'll pass in post, and we'll name it posts. And then I'm gonna use an arrow and call set post and parentheses semicolon, and this class doesn't know what post is yet, so right click that, quick actions, and I'm gonna add a reference to shared and import the using statement. Then I'm gonna add a constructor with setor tap and modify it a little bit. I don't know exactly why it's done this way, but this is how Microsoft does it in their documentation, so I'll just follow that. In this constructor, we want to receive a DB context options, and for the generic type, we'll set it to our DB context class. So mini course DB context, and I'll name it options. And then we want to call the constructor in DB context, so I'll do colon base and pass in these options. And in the body, we won't do anything, so I'll just place the curly braces here behind it. Right, so lastly, in this DB context, I want to add some example data, seed some data. So we're gonna override a method. So I'm gonna do protected override void, and we're gonna override onModel creating, and that has a parameter of type model builder, and I'll name it builder. Then I'm gonna declare a var and name it posts to seed, and that's gonna be a new post array. And for the length, I'll do 6. So we're gonna seed 6 posts, and then I want to do a for loop. So for int I equals 1, and as long as I is smaller or equal to 6, I want to increment I. And then for the body, I'm gonna set the posts to seed at the index of I-1, right, 0 based, to a new post. And I'm just gonna initialize this object here. Then I want to set the post ID to I, and I'm gonna set the title to an interpolated string, and I'll pass in post I, right? And I'm gonna set the content to an interpolated string 2, and I'll just set it to this is post I, and it has some very interesting content. I have also liked the video, go to the right, and subscribed. Awesome. I hope you did. Right, so to actually seed this, we need to call builder.entity, and for the generic, we're gonna pass in post and add parentheses dot has data, and then we'll pass in our posts to seed array. So this is gonna do the seeding. Works really well. so we're almost ready to generate our database now. So the last thing we'll do here is add this DB context as a service in the dependency injection framework and specify we want to use SQLite. So the last thing we'll do here is add this Minicourse DB context as a service in the dependency injection framework and specify we want to use SQLite. So I'm going to go to server program.cs, and below this builder services add swaggergen, I'll add it. So there I'm going to do builder.services.add DB context. And for the generic, I'm going to pass in our Minicourse DB context. I'll right click that, go to the quick actions, import the using statement, then I'll add parentheses, and we're going to do a lambda here. I'll just add the semicolon first. So we have a options object, and that's of type, I don't know, that's of type DB context options builder. And in this options object, we'll call use SQLite. And program doesn't know what that is yet. So I'm going to right click that, quick actions, and import this using statement. So options.use SQLite, and then we need to pass in a connection string. And for that, I'm gonna do data source equals dot slash, so current directory, that's gonna be the server directory, slash data slash, and I'll do minicourse db.db. So it's just a file, right, with SQLite. So that's that. And while we're here, I'll also add a filter for better error messages. So I'll do builder.services.add database developer page exception filter. Okay, so now we're ready to generate the database. And we're going to do that from the command line. So I'm just going to open a terminal with view terminal. I usually have them here below. And if you like the look of this terminal, check out the tutorial linked in the top right corner above me, where I show you how to get it fancy looking like this. So I'm just going to type .NET EF to verify the installation, and if you don't have it installed yet, you can run .NET tool install and --global .NET-EF, right? So that's how you can install it. So I'm just gonna do dir to see what's in this folder, and we have 4 folders and a solution file here. And that folder with the name of the solution is actually empty. I'll show you. So I'll just type explorer dot, right, and double click the folder, and yeah, that's empty. So I'll just delete it. Okay, so to generate the database, I'm gonna cd into the server folder and add a migration. So I'll run .NET EF migrations add first migration, and I'm gonna set the output with -o to data slash migrations and enter that, and watch this data folder. I ran into an error. Visual Studio isn't recognizing Entity Framework Core, it seems. So I'll just restart Visual Studio. Oh wait, I'll save everything first and try .NET Build. Right, so yeah, I forgot to save. So you can save all with this little button. So let's try that again. And there we go, a migrations folder pops up. Let's open it. And let's open this migration file. So today's date and the name of the migration. So in here we see that a posts table will be created and that the columns are correct. And we also see that some data will be inserted. Looks good to me. Let's generate the database from this. So in the terminal, I'll simply do .NET EF database update. And it should show up in this data folder here. And there we go. A file named minicoursdb.db shows up. So I'll just open it in some SQLite Database Explorer software. So that's this DB Browser SQLite. And I'll open it side by side with Visual Studio and just drag and drop the database in there. And nice, we see it has 3 tables. So let's browse the data. And I'll select the post table. And there we go, our example data has been added. Right, so the database portion is done. I'll just close this Explorer, maximize Visual Studio. So the next thing I want to work on are the minimal APIs. So I'll close everything and open up server program.cs. And we see that there's already an example minimal API added. It's this map-get thing. So this is one for the get endpoint and the route is /weather forecast. Let's just start the application and see how it looks. So I'll select server here in this drop down and I'm gonna press the start without debugging button. So we see an auto-generated Swagger UI opens up. And let's try this get request. So I'll expand it, try it out and execute. And there we go, we get an array of JavaScript objects back. So that's what we have so far. Let's modify some of this boilerplate code. So I'll close my browser and press Ctrl C in this terminal to stop it from running. And back in Visual Studio, the first thing I'll do is delete this summaries array and delete the weather forecast record. And then I'll modify this map-get to return all the posts in our database. So first of all, we need access to our database. And we can access it via the DB context. And because it's added to the dependency injection framework here, we can just inject it into these minimal API methods. So I'm just gonna remove the entire body from this one and remove this with name. And I'll change the route or the pattern to posts/all. And I'm also gonna add async to make it asynchronous. And in here I want to inject our mini course DB context and I'll just name it DB context. And in the body I'm gonna declare a list of type post and that's gonna be all posts, and I'll just right click post, quick actions and import the using statement. And the value of this will be equals await db context dot posts, and we'll convert that to a list async. And then we'll return all the posts. Right, so save that and let's try this out. So So I'll start the server project without debugging again. And there we go, a browser window opens up and we see our post/all endpoint. So let's try it. So expand it, try it out, and execute. And there we go. We get all the posts that are in the database. Awesome. So ASP.NET Core automatically serializes the objects to JSON and writes the JSON into the body of the response message. The response code for this return type is 200 OK, assuming there are no unhandled exceptions. Unhandled exceptions are translated into 5xx errors, so internal server errors, I believe. Right, so let's now add the rest of the endpoints to facilitate all the CRUD operations. And I'll start with getting a specific post. So I'll close my browser and stop it from running. So below this map get, I'll actually just copy and paste it. I want to do posts /by-id/ and then curly braces. This is a parameter in the route. So we want a post ID. And that's still gonna be async. And for this first parameter here, we'll do int post ID and add a comma. And we still need our DB context. So for this one, I'm then gonna declare a nullable post and name it post, and its value is await DB context dot posts dot find async, and we're gonna find the post with the post ID. And if that post isn't null, then I want to return results.ok, and that's how we can return a specific HTTP response, right? And we'll just pass in the post here. Else we're gonna return a results.notfound. All right, and I'll also add update, which we'll do with the HTTP put verb. So I'll just copy and paste this map get by ID, and I'll change the verb to map put, and that's going to be posts /update/ and still the post ID parameter. So, and we get this parameter here, and we'll also get a parameter of type post, and that will be the updated post from the client that's calling this endpoint. And we're also gonna inject the DB context. So I'll just remove everything, and I'm gonna declare a var post to update, and let's get it from the database. So I'm gonna do await DB context dot posts dot find async. I'm just gonna pass in the post ID, and if that post to update equals null, then I want to return results.notfound. Else we'll continue on. So else we're gonna set the post to update dot title to updated post dot title, and we're gonna set the post to update dot content to the updated post dot content, and then we want to await the DB context dot save changes async, and this will persist these changes to the database. And lastly, it worked. So we're gonna return results.nocontent. All right, so let's test these out. So I'll start without debugging again. Then I want to expand this post/byId endpoint and try it out. So I'll just pass in 3 and execute. And there we go, we get a 200 OK response back with the post as JSON in the body. So let's try to get a post that doesn't exist. So I'll pass in 20, execute, and nice, we get a 404 not found. Then let's test the update endpoint or put. So I'll expand that, try it out, and I'll update post 2. We can ignore the ID in the body here. Normally you'll probably use DTOs for this. And I'm gonna update the title to updated title and the content to updated content. Then hit execute. And there we go. We get a 204 undocumented response back. So let's get all the posts. So try it out, execute. And there we go, we see that the post ID is still 2, but the title and content have been updated. So let's try updating a post that doesn't exist. So I'll change this to 20 and hit execute, and then we get a 404 response back. Awesome. Okay, so we're ready to implement the last 2 CRUD operations, which are create and delete. So I'll close my browser and stop the project from running. And by the way, sorry if my audio sounds a little bit worse. Some equipment died mid-recording, so I have to improvise. So we'll first do the create operation and we'll use the HTTP post verb for that. I'll implement it above put. I'll just start by copy and pasting the map put. I'm gonna change it to map post. I'm gonna change the route to posts/create. And this is gonna stay async. We don't need the post ID parameter. And this first post parameter, I'll just change the name to post to create. We're gonna receive that in the body from the client, calling this endpoint, and we'll inject the DB context. So for the body here, I want to do db context.posts.add, and I'm gonna add the post to create, and then I'm gonna await db context.save changes async, so it's persisted to the database, and then I want to return results.created, and in there I'm gonna pass an interpolated string, and this is the route where clients can now find this post. So that's gonna be /posts/by-id/ and then curly braces. And we're gonna pass in the post to create.post ID, and this has now been filled in by entity framework, and add a comma, and we'll send up that post to create object that has been created. Okay, that's the post endpoint done. Now for the delete endpoint, I'll go below the put endpoint, and I'll just start again by copying and pasting the put. I'm gonna change the method to map delete, and for the route I'm gonna do posts/delete/post ID. We'll keep the post ID parameter, and this updated post we won't need here. I'll remove the contents of this body of the lambda, and let's go to the by ID, And I'm gonna copy this body and just paste it in here. So we're first gonna get the post to delete. So I'll just rename that, Ctrl RR, post to delete equals await db context dot posts dot find async, and then pass in the post ID. And if that isn't null, I want to do db context dot posts dot remove and remove the post to delete, semicolon. And then I want to persist the deletion to the database. So await db context dot save changes async, and it worked. So I want to return results dot no content, else I want to return results dot not found. Right, so our API is done now. Let's test it out. So I'm gonna start without debugging again, and let's create a new post. So I'll expand create, try it out, and we can leave the ID 0. Normally you'd use special data transfer objects or DTOs for this, but in the interest of time I left it out. For the title I'll do new dash post. For the content I'll do, new content, and hit execute. And nice, so it worked because we get a 201 created response back from the server with the created post in the body. And notice that Entity Framework auto incremented the ID for us, so that works. Let's get all posts again. And at the bottom it shows up. Right, so let's now delete it. Plug this in. I'll open the delete endpoint, try it out. For the post ID I'm gonna do 7. Let's execute that, and there we go. We get a 204 undocumented back, so it worked. Now I'll try to delete one that doesn't exist. 20, and nice, we get a 404 not found back. Nice, so that's the API done. I'll close my browser and stop the project from running. Okay, so now I want to publish this to Azure into an app service resource, and we'll stay on the free tier in this mini course. So let's first set the database up to be copied to Azure. So I'm gonna right click data mini course db.db, go to properties, and yeah, so above me here I want to set the copy to output directory to copy always. That makes it so that it gets sent up to Azure during publishing. And I also want to display our Swagger UI when we have published to Azure. So in server program.cs here, around line 18, I'm gonna cut and paste these two out and just remove this is a development if statement. And in uSwagger UI I want to add some options so that it's opened on the index page without any slashes or route. So I'll do a lambda, and that has an options parameter, and I'll add a body with curly braces, and on that options object I want to call Swagger endpoint, and then pass in a string, and I want to do /swagger /v1 /swagger.json, and for the name I'll just do web API serving a very simple post model. And on the next line I'll do options.route prefix equals, and I'll set it to string.empty. Alright, lastly I'll update the development launch settings to open on the index page without any slashes. So I'll open server, properties, launch settings.json, and I'm gonna remove the launch URL entry from both of these profiles. And profiles are the things you see up here. Okay, so that's all the preparation. Now for the actual publishing, I'm gonna right click server and hit publish. And I'll go for Azure, so I'll hit next. And I'm gonna go for Azure App Service Windows, hit next. And I'm gonna create a new app service by clicking this little plus, and the name is up to you. I'll name it the same as the solution and just append -server. So WASM with ASP.NET Core mini course -server. Alright, and I'll use the pay-as-you-go subscription. I'm gonna set the resource group to mini courses, and for the hosting plan I'll create a new one. I'll first copy the name of this app service, hit new, and I'm just gonna prefix it with ASP-, which stands for App Service Plan, and that's how this hosting plan thing is called in the Azure portal. And then I'll paste the app service name, select the location closest to you. For me it's West Europe, and I'm gonna set the size to 3, and that makes it so that we won't get any bills for this resource. And then I'll hit OK and create. And this usually takes less than a minute, so I'll just speed up the video. And there we go, it's created. So I'll hit next. And we're gonna skip this API management step. That's meant for bigger applications like this. Skip this step. And then I'll hit finish. Yay, so everything looks good. Now we just need to hit the publish button. So I'll click that. And now our API gets built and published to Azure. First time it takes the longest, but usually less than 5 minutes. A browser window will open up when it's done. So I'll just speed up the video. Right, and there we go. We are greeted by our Swagger UI. Let's try to get all the posts. Yay, that works. And the rest works too, as I've shown in the first few minutes of this video. So there you go, you now know how to build a minimal asynchronous web API with .NET 6 and have it up and running in the Microsoft Azure Cloud. So now we have the backend part of the tutorial done. If you're from the future, the front end part is probably already out. In it, I'll show you how to build a simple front end with Blazor WebAssembly and Bootstrap that consumes this API. I hope I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful to you. Make sure you like and subscribe, because then I'll create more of this free content. You can download source code and other resources from the description below. Lastly, I hope you'll join our developer Discord community. In there you can chat with other devs and people learning software development. There's also a support channel to get help if you're stuck on something. Check the first comment on this video for an invite link. That's all from me. Good luck on your developer journey.